I will speak on behalf of the Dipylon Society. Mapping Ancient Athens is an interactive mapping platform for visualizing data from past archaeological work. We processed more than 1,473 sites in Athens, excavated by at least 240 archaeologists for over 160 years. Until we got here, we had to deal with several issues related to legacy data. But let's start from the beginning. I will discuss some of the limitations of analog legacy data produced by rescue excavation reports. Then I will turn to some of the challenges we faced and the processes we followed in the project, such as digitizing data and incorporating them into the GIS environment. I will then navigate the mapping platform and briefly discuss some of Dipylon's aspirations. The knowledge produced so far for the city of Athens is primarily based on long-term systematic excavations of large and well-known archaeological sites, such as the Acropolis, the Olympion, the Keramikos, and the Athenian Agora. But what about the rest of the city? What was built around these well-known monuments? How about people's neighborhoods, their workshops? How about the location of baths, of cemeteries, or of small shrines in the city? Below which modern structures are they hidden? For possible answers, we have to look at the results of the rescue excavations, which are mandatory interventions before every private or public construction work. Rescue excavations follow the flow of the construction activity in the city, and as a result, ancient remains are excavated at random locations. Another limitation of rescue excavations is that inevitably ancient remains are excavated in a fragmentary manner. The sections of the Themistoclean city wall you see on your screen, for example, were excavated in a piecemeal fashion within a course of over 40 years. So we have limited boundaries of excavation trenches and fragmented antiquities that lack topographical context. Rescue excavations do not take place only in private plots, but also before large-scale public works under enormous time pressure. In the case of the construction of the Lenormand-Konstantinopoulos Street overpass in the 1980s, for example, the excavations were carried out in parallel with the road works at the same time in many places. When a section was finished, the antiquities of the adjacent section no longer existed. Rescue excavations were often carried out contrary to the very nature of the proper excavation process. And yet, under such circumstances, archaeologists in the major public works had to observe and correctly identify all the evidence as it appeared, to record it quickly and accurately, to achieve the minimum of losses and the maximum of results. In sum, we have hundreds and hundreds of rescue excavations carried in the city as parts of a space-time puzzle. Wouldn't it be useful if we could collate and systematically organize all these resources? So the idea was to design a spatial temporal database and then map all the record and make it available for research. This was the challenge we took at Dipylon. It is commonplace that using legacy data is often very complicated. We had to simplify their complexity and organize them in a meaningful way. We had to make several decisions in preparing the material. Let's first have a look at the primary data, the nature of the evidence we had. Every source with a published excavation report was used in the project. Yet the basic resource of rescue excavation data in Greece is the Archaeological Dipylon, the annual journal of the Archaeological Service. With this type of primary data, we were confronted with issues such as different approaches to recording the archaeological work carried out by the large number of archaeologists in such a long excavation period. Short and vague descriptive data, particularly those from the earlier excavation reports. In some, we had a highly complicated and heterogeneous material to deal with. Very often, due to the lack of information and incomplete excavation of features, Excavators are reluctant in identifying and dating them. Out of the total of 3,793 excavated features, 27% are registered in the database with unassigned use of space, and 25% are undated. Let's take the example at the corner of Ulis and Apollono Street. The report simply states that they found a circular mosaic floor. Subsequent scholars considered the round building as a bath, which is probably right, as we learned before from Mr. Bourniar's presentation, but for our work, its use has been registered as unknown. In all these cases, we followed the excavations report, even if we had some other opinion. Sometimes we were faced with conflicting identification of remains, which are obviously part of the same monument, but when excavated, were not recognized as such. See, for example, the excavations of clearly the same wall recovered at two adjoining plots at 10 and 12 Sub-4 Street. 10 years separated two excavations. At the top one, on 12 Sub-4 Street, the remains were identified as a perivolous wall in red, while their continuation at 10 Sub-4 Street as a drain. You see them in blue. Again, we did not manipulate the identification. Maybe in the future these problems will be managed in the context of another project. Also, we faced some problems in locating the excavated site, but finally, and sometimes with the assistance of archaeologists from the service, we managed to locate the vast majority of them, which was very important and not much hoped for initially. Excavations are reported with the modern street names, often the address is incomplete or vague. For example, we excavated a plot at the intersection of X and Y streets. Which of the four plots could be that? As far as classification is concerned, we had to take decisions as to how to arrange their records typologically and chronologically. The various buildings or structures were organized according to 12 classes related to use of space: public space, religion, education, transport, fortification, water supply, drainage, health, welfare, domestic space, production, commerce, funerary space, and unknown use. These 12 classes were divided into 65 categories of features and 90 subcategories, a selection that was based on the excavation findings. The peculiarity of the project is that we wanted to isolate each single excavated piece of a structure or a building that shaped the built environment at a given time. We had to deal with a wide range of chronological terms that dated the findings, either by century or by date, by period, by historical events or destructions, by rulers, or different dates in Greek and English. For example, Greek archaeologists used the date Paleo-Christian, which in English is late Roman. For reasons of data systematization, we opted for the established subdivisions of the long periods of Greek history. The basic idea of the project was extracting excavation plans from the published reports. So, in locating the exact locations of the sites, we had to use the most appropriate baseline. This proved to be the National Cadastre of 2019, which offered the precision of a standardized baseline. However, research was done on earlier topographical diagrams, as you can see on this slide. We entered each feature in the database using PostgreSQL with its special extension PostGIS. Recording used is the excavated plot, which is connected with single or multiple tables. To enter the geospatial data, we adopted the following workflow. After having located the excavated site in the current cadastral diagram, we drew its boundaries in a polygon. The polygon was digitized in every detail, and the excavation plan was georeferenced. The excavated remains were vectorized, and as a result, every plan was written in the database as a vector in absolute coordinates. Finally, a polygon was drawn to enclose each identified type of buildings or constructions in order to classify them according to space use and data, which offers the advantage to manage all this data in a digital environment. Let us now navigate the platform. This is the platform. There are three main ways to navigate. Let's explore them. One is to ask where have there been excavations in the city by typing a specific address at top. Another way is to ask when by clicking below for specific time periods starting from the Neolithic onwards. One can also ask what was the type of records found according to their space use. Now let's start with where and filter an address. And type, for example, Amalias Avenue. Our search returns 28 sites. You may select any site on Amalias Avenue by scrolling the bar just below the address to explore the antiquities found. Go to the intersection of Amalias Avenue and Lysikrata Street, or opposite 36 Amalias Avenue, and further down at the tram line excavations. You may wish to explore what was found in the Syntagma Metro excavations and be interested in having some further information for each location of this tour. To find out what is this monument in green, for example, that occupies such a large area in front of the Greek Parliament. In this case, we have the remains of the late Roman bath complex. Or explore the remains of this workshop installation of the classical period with 7 statue casting pits dug in bedrock. Let us now go back to the second way to navigate the map, asking when. I chose to show you the spot excavated in Kogia Square in the Middle 80s, just outside the Themistoclean city wall. Here the map activates various periods of time simultaneously. But let's start from the earlier findings. Here you have visualized information about a cemetery dating from the 8th century onwards. I invite you to watch at the bottom of your screen the transition from one historical period to the next in the slides that follow. In the built environment of the archaic period, an old path was formed into a main road in the 6th century BC. In the classical period, another incoming road, which is preserved today in situ, seems to join the previous road, forming an intersection just north of Kogia Square. We go through the same topography in the following centuries, in the Hellenistic period, the Roman period, until we reach the late Roman times, we discover a huge change in space use. The site ceases to be used as a cemetery. Most of it is now exclusively occupied by a complex of ceramic workshops here in green. No remains were found in the excavated site for the Byzantine period or the Ottoman period, until the erection in 1873 of the Municipal Theatre of Athens designed by Ziller, the foundations of which were found during the excavation. Let's now move to the third way to explore the map and to ask what was the type of records found. Here you see a part of the modern district of Theseo. I have selected a set of space uses at top, and I have clicked Hellenistic period at the bottom of the screen. Features in themselves tell us only a few things about the past. Visualized here in relation to each other, they are associated in the urban context and start to become more meaningful. What types of information do we get? We have a well-protected residential area just inside the western fortification line, here oriented north-south. In purple at right, you see remains of houses just inside the city wall. The Hellenistic neighborhood is very close to the gates that lead to the port of Piraeus. You see in orange sections of streets of that same period. One may also suggest a reconstruction of the road network. At top left, in the green circle just outside the city wall, you see minimal remains of a circular bath. And at the very center, a rectangular cistern in blue, possibly part of a Hellenistic household. And of course, several other types of evidence or elements of everyday life are not displayed on the map. For example, a theater ticket that was found in a road surface. The question is, to what extent can one restore life in those years? Spatial relationships among antiquities seem to allow for the reconstruction of a potential history of an area. With the help of the map, let's try a temporal spatial narrative that starts from a selected plot to the south of the Acropolis. The plot is situated on 16 Diakou Street at Koukaki, inside the white polygon, on the road that leads straight to the new Acropolis Museum. The earliest remains of the site belong to a house of the Hellenistic era. The house has at least 5 rooms with marble revetment and mosaic floors. It is being rebuilt in the Roman period. 4 additional spaces were recovered. In the late Roman period, a furnace destroyed the mosaic floor of the Hellenistic house. A stretch of road was also found running along the north side of the house. You can see its excavated part in orange. Where does this road lead? Let's look at the surrounding area. The house is 60 meters far from the Themistoclean city wall line, very close to the Olympion and to the Lissos River, outside the city wall. If we zoom in and getting closer to the ground, one supposes that the road must be somehow connected to the large organized neighborhood of that same period recovered in the Makrianis plot. Maybe the house in circle was itself part of that same neighborhood. There are 2 road arteries also recovered in the area, possibly intersecting at some point close to the east of the house in circle. These roads were possibly leading to the gates of the city wall. The house is also very close to the colonnaded building with limestone foundations, perhaps belonging to the so-called law court at the Palladium, as proposed by John Travlos. I believe that if we manage to delve into the data displayed in the platform, then we will be able to gather more information about past life in the area. If we return to the real world, we realize that the findings at this particular plot were covered over by an apartment building. I wonder if the residents would be curious to know that 3.5 meters below street level, there existed a Hellenistic Roman household excavated in 1969. And this reflection will lead us to the last section of the presentation. What are the next steps? These would involve constantly updating the platform with data from new excavations and adding analog legacy data in cooperation with national bodies of heritage management so as to include diaries, pictures, plans, or any other type of data. In general, at Dipylon, we aspire the mapping platform to be a widely used tool. Future activities will hopefully extend in many directions: public archaeology and education, to bring data into the classroom and invite young children to imagine the city of their future. Mapping ancient Athens brings the hidden city closer to its citizens. We wish to develop web apps free of charge with storytelling and audio tools to familiarize the public with the hidden antiquities. And in our free time, Why not become travelers in our own city? The project required coordination efforts, teamwork, and communication between the multidisciplinary project partners. We owe special thanks to the effort of the Antiquities of Athens for their cooperation in this endeavor. The contribution of Mrs. Ban, Mrs. Eleni Servetopoulou, and Mr. Leonidas Bournias has been invaluable. It would be an honor for us to expand this cooperation in the context of wider European programs. The project was funded 4 years ago by the Stavros Diakonos Foundation, our lead donor, to which we remain grateful, while an earlier scholarship had been ensured by the Packard Humanities Institute. It has since been generously supported by the EGEAS non-for-profit foundation. They all helped us make our dream come true. Thank you very much.